Everyone here probably knows about the Mayflower coming to North America from Great Britain in the year 1620. You probably also know we have 13 original colonies, and you've heard of the Boston Tea Party.
And everyone also knows about the Declaration of Independence that began our country's beginning in the year 1776. And everyone also knows that George Washington was our first president.
But there are lots of other pieces to this story. As our teacher has taught us, like all good teachers would, there are always two sides to any story.
We want to tell you about some of the interesting things we've learned about our wonderful nation's beginnings. About 150 years after the Mayflower first arrived on our country's east coast, the colonies had seen immense expansion. There were now 13 colonies that were under the rule of King George III, King of England.
I am King George. I was established by God, and my people in those colonies should have listened to me.
For a long time, this arrangement had suited the colonists very well. They had local governments which handled minute problems and ultimately answered to King George and his parliament. However, the colonists became increasingly irritated with some of King George's rulings. The final straw for many of the colonists came in the mid to late 1760s, when King George began imposing taxes on the colonists to recoup costs from war debts.
I am King George. My people in England paid taxes, so it made sense that my people in the colonies should also pay taxes to help with Britain's debt. I hope I gave my counselors a raise for thinking of that fabulous idea.
I am General George Washington. I used to be loyal to your causes, King George, but now I see the foolishness of your ways. The colonists already pay taxes to their colonies. They cannot afford to pay taxes to you also.
I had to make it clear that they would pay taxes or face the consequences.
We were not going to pay when become your slaves.
The colonies began to split into many ways they thought. Many colonists were angry with King George and his parliament. These people began to be known as the Patriots. Those who believed they should continue to follow King George's rule were called Loyalists. Although the Patriots believed they were within the rights to fight King George's taxes, they often treated the Loyalists with violence and hatred. The unrest between the Patriots and the British continued to grow until March of 1770, where the Boston Massacre occurred.
If your patrons hadn't acted as they did, that horrible massacre, as you call it, never would have happened. How undignified of the colonists to spend months wreaking havoc all across the land, tarring and feathering innocent men who were doing their duty to the crown, and then taunting my soldiers on the day of the massacre.
Well, if your soldiers hadn't overreacted to one little flying log knocking over a red goat, we wouldn't have had 5 of our men shot and killed.
I think the prompter's broke.
The Boston Massacre was a terrible misunderstanding on all sides, and it only led to greater unrest. Little did the colonists know that the same day as the Boston Massacre, King George and his parliament had finally made the decision to stop all taxes except for the small tax on tea. Unfortunately, they also refused to allow anyone but a British company to ship tea to the colonies. This led to the Boston Tea Party in December 1773, where some patriots dressed as Indians snuck onto a ship docked in Boston Harbor and dumped 45 tons of imported tea into the water.
Is that what those traitors called their little scheme that wasted all that glorious tea? Tea is the drink of the gods, you know.
Oh, you wish we were now tea.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled program for this special edition of Tyson News, Channel 1776. I have just uncovered some amazing news that couldn't wait to be heard. This evening, you've been hearing about men who did important things during the Revolution. You might think that all the women just stayed home, did laundry, and cooked dinner, while the men fought the Revolutionary War. You might think that the men were the only important ones back then. You might think that the women couldn't capture British spies or even fight for the colonies at all. After all, women didn't go to school. But do you think the women listened to all that? Yes? Well, let me tell you what really happened. The women in the 1700s were independent too. A lot of women cooked food for the Patriots and took care of them when they were hurt. A group of women dressed as men grabbed muskets and caught a British spy. A lot of times, British soldiers invaded homes, slept on their beds, and ate the food of the people who lived there. Sounds pretty terrible, doesn't it? No way, it was great. The moms and daughters had to serve them so they could secretly spy on the soldiers for information. Then they could give the messages to the Patriots.
Yankee Doodle Doodle, Mom was spying on the redcoats. Put a message in some bread and set it on a big boat.
Well, anyways. Also, some women dressed as patriots cut their hair so that they could fight too. They actually made some pretty good soldiers. Some more women made clothes and coats for the patriots because many had refused to buy clothes from the British because of the taxes the king was putting on them. Nancy Hart, when 6 armed British soldiers invaded her home, got them all drunk, shot one with his own rifle, and threatened the others with it while her daughter ran for the Patriots. Prudence Wright and Shira Sadek led a group of women dressed as men to capture a British spy who carried secret messages in his boots. Even younger girls stood up for the colonies. Susan Boudinot, at around my age, and her mother were served tea by the British. Susan curtsied politely before throwing the tea out the window. All this just goes to show that women were important back in the 1700s, just as they are now. Sophie Tyson, signing off. A few months after the Boston Tea Party, King George felt he had no other choice but to close Boston's harbor. This led to many Bostonians being out of work, and many colonists, especially in Boston, began to consider war with England the best solution to their disagreements.
The Continental Congress did try to appeal to you, King George. All you had to do is get rid of the unconstitutional laws you were pressing on the colonies.
If I had given in to your nonsense, you never would have been truly loyal to my crown again.
In April 1775, Paul Revere and William Dawes rode through the night to warn the men in the surrounding towns and villages that they had seen the Redcoat Army marching out to seize Patriot leaders, John Hancock and Sam Adams.
The Redcoats are coming.
Many Minutemen, men who were not trained soldiers but could be ready on a minute's notice, heard the warning and prepared to fight. Although 8 colonists died that day, they had boldly fought for their freedom and begun the Revolutionary War.
The first gunshot that day was called the shot heard around the world. It was indeed heard in Mother England, as I needed to know if the colonists were subject to my country or claiming to be independent. This was the beginning of your Revolutionary War.
I never desired a fight. A brother's sword had been sheathed into a brother's breast. The once happy and peaceful plains of America were either to be drenched by blood or inhabited by slaves.
The colonists formed the Continental Army, of which George Washington was asked to be commander-in-chief.
I did not think myself equal to the command. I vowed to perform the task to the best of my ability, but I would not accept a salary.
What a goody two-shoes.
For a year, the Redcoats and the Continental Army fought.
We cannot forget to mention my man Henry Knox pulled off the amazing view with the 60 cannons.
It was beyond me how Mr. Knox managed to get those cannons from New York and transport them 300 miles by ox cart across frozen plains, half-frozen rivers, and wintry mountains to your men in Boston. I dare say he deserved that victory, and my men ran screaming for the hills.
Finally, in July of 1776, the Continental Congress signed the Declaration of Independence, declaring our nation's independence from England and from King George's leadership. Sophie Tyson signing on. Channel 1776. I just discovered that the Declaration of Independence is being signed. Let's go. Hello, could you tell me what you are doing?
We're signing the Declaration of Independence.
Amazing. Could you tell me what the Declaration of Independence is?
It's a letter to King George that establishes our independence from Great Britain.
Very cool. Could I read a little bit of it?
Yes.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government.
Let's skip on a little, and let's skip up a little. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states.
Let's skip up a little more. And for the support of this declaration, with the full reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Excuse me, we need a sign.
Of course. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Sophie Tyson signing off. And that is how our country became its own nation.
Wait just a minute, young woman. That is not the end of the story.
But you signed the Declaration of Independence. You told King George you'd had enough and were done with his rules.
And you think I would give up so easily? The colonists were traitors. That document they signed was high treason.
The Declaration of Independence had not been the end we patriots hoped for. The fighting continued for many years. It was a sad time for me as my army could not overcome your redcoats. Although I tried my best, the Continental Army was not well trained, so we lost as many battles as we won. Also, we were a very poor army and were sorely lacking in supplies of all kinds. One winter, I lost over 2,500 men to death by starvation and smallpox alone. That was not the glorious rebellion those men signed up for.
But rebellions are built on hope. Oh wait, this isn't Star Wars, different rebellion. The years after the Declaration of Independence was signed were filled with rioting and violence. Our new country was torn apart by continued disagreement between patriots and loyalists. Those who chose not to fight for either side were tarred and feathered by patriots. Loyalists were thrown in prison by patriots. Neighbors murdered neighbors, and many loyalists fled to Canada and Nova Scotia. Also, the Redcoats remained as a common presence in most American towns, terrorizing rebel supporters, stealing food and livestock, even burning homes and entire villages.
Then, in October of 1781, everything came to an end. My men had fought hard that they were not able to overcome General Washington and his allies from my enemy friends. I was at least pleased that my General Cornwallis managed to snub General Washington by sending his second-in-command to present the British sword of surrender instead of presenting it himself. And he took it to the French general, not General Washington. Ha!
Summer Daddy. Yes, but that French general the British officer to me instead, and I appointed him to win my second in command. Ha! When the sword was finally presented, the war had unofficially ended, even though you continued to make attempts to overcome us.
I was hoping you wouldn't mention that embarrassing fact. Yes, I kept trying for 2 more years, but my people no longer had hope in the cause, and it unfortunately was useless. So in September of 1783, I finally signed a peace treaty with France and Spain that included complete independence for America.
A few years later, in 1787, the Constitution of the United States of America was signed by all 13 colonies.
The Constitution became the foundation for our new country's laws and government, and still is the basis of our laws today. Many
of you have heard of how our great nation was founded on God, and our founding fathers based much of our country's beginnings and laws on our Christian beliefs, including the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America.
Yeah, as you've seen in this presentation, just because most of the leaders follow God doesn't mean all the people will.
We hope tonight you have learned at least one new thing about our country's past.
But we hope even more you've seen how important it is for Christians to love in action and in truth, no matter what those around them are doing. This is vital, whether fighting for a cause or just being a neighbor to those around you.
Thank you for coming. It makes us so happy to have you sharing this evening with us, and we hope you enjoyed your time here.
Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Idaho, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming,